unfortunately, if you're not in at least in the 700s, you don't have access to the American dream anymore. So if by focusing on 900, it'll keep you at least in the 700s. And, you know, I successfully reverse engineered the FICO algorithms back in 2000, and that's the formula we use and teach to our clients and we use to restore your credit. And once you understand my formula, it's really impossible for you not to have, you know, great credit, or at least be in the 700s or 800s. One of our clients recently, as you know, recorded the highest credit score in the world. His middle score is 990, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
And this is the first time in recorded history that anybody has successfully gotten a perfect score. Now, up until my client got 990 using my formula, everybody thought that it was a theoretical maximum.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you go on the internet, people say, well, can it be attained? I don't think you can really do it, but we've done it. We've done it. So, you know, he's one of the featured individuals on our website. You can see his credit report. So, am I saying that everybody needs a 990? No, but it's there if you need it, if you want it, if you want unlimited access to capital. I mean, this gentleman always shares with me. He owns a very successful business, but he said that, you know, whenever he has to show someone his credit, an investor or lender, it changes their whole paradigm. I mean, just to be in the 900s, the way people look at you is in a completely different light in this environment. So
with a 990 score, is it more than just paying your bills on time? And
it's much more than that. And one of the major issues that we've found with people in credit, in the year 2000, we switched to the FICO system. In the old credit system, if I said, how's your credit, I'm basically saying, do you pay your bills on time? Mm-hmm. So that's how it worked in that system. In the FICO system, if I say, how's your credit, I'm asking you, do you understand the system? Because now there's 5 components to your credit score. It's not a 1-component system. It's a 5-component. And your payment history is only 35% of your score. So, as you know from grade school, a 35% on a test is still a failing score. So a lot of clients have great credit histories, and they will still have bad scores. You know, I looked at someone's credit today, which was essentially very good credit, but he was in the 500s. So his structure was off. So we had to restructure his credit based on the FICO model. And unfortunately, most people don't know what they don't know. So they're still thinking, well, I pay my bills on time. Everything that you read on the internet is pay your bills, pay your bills. That has little or nothing to do, not nothing, but it's a very small portion of your overall credit score. You know, yes, you want to pay your bills on time. That should be a given, but there's still 65% of your score left to work with. And that's what we try to have people focus on. You're in a FICO environment. You have to shift your paradigm.
So that's what I normally think of when someone asks, you know, about credit is, you know, your ability and your ability and your I guess your commitment to paying your bills on time. So if that's the case, then there are other factors involved. So if the timeline of whether you pay your bills within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or so on, obviously you are, or the FICO score system considers other factors, and I guess it also considers whether or not you have a high ratio of credit to debt.
Yes. Your credit debt ratio is singularly the most important factor. That's more important than paying your bills on time.
So explain exactly for our listeners exactly what the debt ratio would be, you know, for, you know, just using raw numbers on an example of, you know, if I have this amount of debt versus this amount of credit and how it affects my FICO score.
Well, the FICO model it's an algorithm, so it's looking for certain things. And in this case, it's looking for what is called in the industry utilization. It's looking for a utilization ratio. So that simply means it wants to understand what is your balance to credit limit ratio. That is your utilization ratio. So a lot of people are familiar with the concept of, they want to understand what's your debt to income ratio, which is a constantly used in mortgages. But for your credit profile, they want to know what is your balance to credit limit ratio. That is a utilization ratio. And the lower that ratio, the higher your score. But you just can't get to zero. And what I mean by that, and I just went through this with a client the other day, they had paid perfectly on their credit. In fact, they came into some money, so they felt like they should pay everything off to zero. But in doing so, it brought their credit score down, and they didn't understand that. And so what I explained to them, in the utilization ratio, you cannot have a zero in the denominator or the numerator. So in the top and the bottom of the equation, you cannot have a zero because it throws off the ratio. So same thing with your credit. If you pay all your credit cards to zero, it will actually bring your credit score down. The ideal scenario is to not let it slip below really 10%, but you can take it down as low as 1% and still have a very high credit score. But ideally, 10%. So what I do routinely is I carry my credit cards and I rotate them, and I'll use them to put gas in your car. Now it costs $100 to fill up my tank.
Right.
So if I put $100 on one of my $5,000 credit cards, then that is enough to keep that credit card active and to keep a healthy score.
So as I understand it, say for example, if I have a credit card that has a limit of say $1,000,
yes,
and but my balance is near say $850, $900.
Oh yeah, you have terrible credit.
But although I pay the minimum on time and I'm not late,
you'll have horrible credit.
So that would negatively impact my credit score. But if I have $1,000 credit limit on another card, and I've only used like say $50 or $100
yes,
of that credit limit, then that would be, and I paid those bills on time, then that would be a much better scenario.
No, there's no question. That will maximize your score. The reason that the average person doesn't know this is it's by design. When you sign your initial credit card application, it has a restrictive endorsement on it. A restrictive endorsement is a contract or disclosure that may or may not be immediately visible or easy to detect. So part of that restrictive endorsement says as your credit score goes down, your interest rate will go up. So your credit card companies have a vested interest in your bad credit.
Oh.
It is in their best interest to destroy your credit rating during the course of your tenure with that company. Because the lower they can get your score, the higher they can get your rate. By the numbers, I think the average rate right now, when I last looked, it was close to 20%, which is a ridiculous and scary amount of interest. But I know a lot of my clients are paying 29% interest on a credit card. At 29%, you can't pay that card off unless you run into a lot of money, unless you hit the lottery or you have rich relatives.
Sure.
So
29%.
But most of those clients started out with a 3% rate or a 6% rate, and they didn't realize that as their score goes down, the interest goes up.
Okay. So if we bring it back into context of trying to start new in 2013, this
yes,
is January, and people want to start fresh, and they want to look at their credit report and try to rehabilitate their credit, or they're working toward a goal, as I mentioned, whether they want to buy a home or a car or just fix their credit for a new job, because many times they're going to ask you for your credit report nowadays.
Yes.
So if that's the case, then say someone walks into your office and they say, Dr. Grayson, here's my credit report. you know, what kinds of things would you be looking for, and what kinds of things would you make that person aware of that they should try to address in trying to rehabilitate a credit report? So I guess, say, for example, if I come into your office and I put my credit report in front of you, then what kinds of things are you immediately looking for that we need to discuss to try to get myself back on track?
The first thing I'm going to look for is derogatory credit. Derogatory credit, especially this time of year. We're closing in on tax season, so everybody's getting that income tax check. And usually people look for their income tax to pay their bills, pay their debts. You know, they're uniquely interested in restoring their credit. So everybody's focused on using that money to buy down their debt and to really restore their credit. Unfortunately for them, most people, and I would say probably 90% of people, use that money incorrectly. So what I'm saying is, if you have bad debt, you have charged off items, collection items, and you take your income tax money to pay off those items, you are actually buying bad credit.
Mm-hmm.
You're buying bad credit. And this is what I mean by buying bad credit. If I have a collection and I pay that collection off, that collection still reports the same way.
Okay.
It still scores the same way. Now, creditors are very slick. So, like I had a client the other day who one of their creditors had took them to court for a judgment, and they came in to see us, and I sent a very aggressive letter to this creditor, and so the creditor was asking the client initially for $23,000. After they got my administrative remedy, they called the client independent of us, and they said, hey, just give us $300.
Mm-hmm.
We'll settle this out. And the client was, losing their minds. They were so excited and happy. They're like, $300, of course, I'll do it right away. And but they thought enough to call me and say, hey, Doc, good news. They're going to do it for $300. I said, no problem. I'm happy with that. I prefer zero, but $300 will work for me. What about your credit? She said, no problem. They've agreed to send a letter to the credit bureau to show this item is satisfied. I said, hold on. Do not send them $1.
Mm-hmm.
We're not doing that. She was like, what? It's $300. Wrong. That is not the central issue. It's not the money. Once you pay it, it's still a satisfied judgment, a satisfied collection still scores the same as an unsatisfied.
Okay.
A satisfied charge-off, if the language is still negative, it's still a negative item. So there's nothing I can do. So what I did was I had our in-house attorney call them and say, look, we're not doing it. The only way we're going to do this is if you agree to stop reporting that item to the credit.
Mm-hmm.
And, they said, well, first they said, well, we can't do it. It's not going to happen. We're not going to do it. And then later they called the client, and they said they're sending out a letter right away to take it off of the credit report. If I'm giving you money, the only humanly way possible I'm going to do that is if you agree to salvage my credit.
Right, exactly. Of course you want to, pay your bills and pay your obligations and your debt. So, I want to put that out there first. But, let's be real. People are doing it with the purpose of getting some benefit. And the benefit here would be to increase my credit score. So if I have limited funds and it's not going to really make any difference, even if I pay the $300 or whatever they're asking for, and I'm still in the same boat, people are not going to be really motivated to move on it.
That's absolutely correct. And one thing that I want to emphasize, because a lot of times, and sometimes I get criticized for this on the internet, people think that I'm advocating not paying your bills. That can't be far from the truth. I have perfect credit. Everybody I associate with has perfect credit. The only way you can maintain perfect credit is by paying your bills.
Right.
I'm in the perfect credit business. However, once you have let a debt lapse for 120 days, that falls into a completely separate category.
Mm-hmm.
In this country, we have debt forgiveness laws to help us eliminate bad debt. The reason that most people don't know or most people don't use it is because it takes a very intense skill set to know how to use those laws to successfully eliminate debt. So the average company that purports to help people won't use debt forgiveness laws because it's much easier to call a creditor up and say, hey, not 50% off or not 30% off, and I'll get these people to just give you the rest.
Right.
You know, that's easy. Now they've justified their fee because you think, well, they did save me some money, so they feel that that's a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the business we're in. I'm trying to help save the economy, and I'm trying to get politicians and policymakers to understand this. If you're throwing your money away to debt collectors, that does not benefit the gross national product. I would rather you settle with them the right way, okay? Make sure it comes off your credit so that you're investing in good credit, so now you can go out and buy a new house. You can buy a car the right way. You're not paying 20 or 30% interest on a car. You're buying a car. You're buying a house. Now you can send your kids to school. You're doing things that will improve the economy. Right now, for the first time in history, banks own more property than individuals. That is a negative situation. That's why our economy is in such terrible shape. We need people to buy houses. They can't do it with bad credit. So I have to tell you the right way to do these types of things. I consider it the highest level of patriotism.
Right.
You know, right now it's an insult to me that our country has bad credit. Our country.
Yeah.
You know, Moody's or Standard & Poor's, they're always downgrading us. You know, our credit rating. Mm-hmm. And that's because our citizens have bad credit.
Right.
So until someone steps out on a limb and say, hey, let's help the people get good credit, there's so much money in bad credit that nobody wants to fight that machine.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so funny that you mentioned, you know, the government and its downgraded credit rating because, I mean, even the federal government is going through a credit crisis right now. I mean, they're even fighting right now in Washington, as you know, about the debt ceiling and, you know, not having enough money to pay the government's bills and obligations that Congress voted on to enact programs that now they cannot pay for because of the debt ceiling.
Right.
You know, so as they get ready to fight that battle, I mean, people right here in our local communities are fighting their own personal battles at home with their own credit and debt ceiling.
And, you know, people will take this personally, and they're looking at it the wrong way. The government has created programs to get you out of debt and restore your credit. It's for their own best interest. It's a service. You know, you're paying for that service through your taxes. This is how I took it. I was at a church doing a workshop recently, and one of the members who was extremely religious, they took great offense to what I was saying and how I had to explain it to them. I'm not teaching you how to not pay your creditors. What I'm teaching you is how to use services that you've paid for.
Right.
So I asked them this. I said, have you ever been in a car accident? And he said, yes, as a matter of fact, I have been in a car accident. I said, tell me this. Was it your fault? Yes, it was my fault. Okay, so you're telling me you struck another individual's car and damaged their car. He said, yes. I said, did you pay that individual for the damage that you caused? He said, well, no, of course not. I had insurance. I said, wait a minute. You caused the damage. It was your fault, but you let someone else pay the damages. He said, yes, that's correct. I said, well, that's how your tax dollars work.
Right.
Your tax dollars buy you debt insurance. The government has crazy programs, fresh start programs everywhere, debt forgiveness programs to wipe out your debt once it goes bad so that you can restore your credit and start buying houses again. Until, you know, there's a shift in credit and people can buy houses again, we will never have a healthy economy.
Mm-hmm. I know, and that's it's so unfortunate that people see it that way, that, people who provide a service like yourself think that we're trying to get around paying your obligations, and that's certainly not the case. That's definitely not the case. What we're trying to do is give you a strategy to manage your debt properly. And so with the limited amount of funds that you may have, to make some very good decisions on where that money goes and where you can get the best benefit of it during a particular strategy that you're trying to pursue.
Exactly. And you know how I kind of counter that rationale? Once we get your score over 700, we try to sit down and counsel our clients, and we introduce them to our banking contacts so that now they have access to capital and they can start to understand. I think one of the biggest problems is, especially in certain communities, they don't understand the true nature of what credit even is in this country. Mm-hmm. Most people are taught that when you get good credit, you can buy stuff. So if you don't need stuff, you don't need credit. Mm-hmm. That's no longer the paradigm. You need credit to live in this country. If you have bad credit, it costs you 40% more to live than it does me.
Right.
So you now owe it to, and just like you mentioned earlier, the Census Bureau took a poll, and employers said, 69.7% of employers said credit is the first thing they consider before they give you a job, a promotion, or a raise. So now it controls your entire livelihood. So you owe it to yourself to understand credit technology. I did a workshop for the governor back in October. I was in Albany at the DASNY workshop, and this was for small business owners. And what I told them was, unfortunately, I don't care what business you're in, if you're not in the credit business, you're taking a chance on going out of business. Everybody has to become a credit expert. You can no longer allow people to interpret credit technology for you, because they will do it to their best benefit. Look at the mortgage industry. Because people don't understand foreclosure laws, which is a part of the debt litigation, because people don't understand foreclosure laws, over 15 million people lost their homes to wrongful foreclosure.
Right.
I mean, think about it. 15 million people had their homes stolen from them simply because they don't understand the law. They did not hold the banks accountable. Now, the government came after them for that crime, but look at what the compensation is for the people that lost their house. For the people who lost their homes wrongfully to foreclosure, their compensation works out to be about $1,500.
Yeah, and that's not even... I mean, you can't imagine the pain and suffering
and
the misery.
Uprooted. You poured your lifelong investment. Your family is vested into this property, and for them wrongfully stealing your house from you, you get $1,500.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And people, experience such pain and misery over something like that. As I work to help people in foreclosures and short sales and all kinds of other mortgage issues, I see it on a constant basis. And, as they just had that bank settlement yesterday with the federal government, I think it was Bank of America.
Yes.
And again, it's not really, it sounds like millions and billions of dollars, but it's not as if it's going to 5 people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's going to hundreds of thousands of people, and they're only going to see a limited amount of that money, if any.
Right, and a lot of it goes to, some of it goes to the government, some goes to the attorneys. So by the time it translates, like there was the settlement for Countrywide,
right,
which was one of the originators of some of this loan origination malfeasance and foreclosure fraud. Now they were sued. They lost about 10 or 15 billion a couple years ago. That translated into one of my clients got a settlement check on that. I think it was like $400 or $500. $400 or $500. I mean, out of billions of dollars, you get $400 or $500. Mm-hmm. So the only way for you to get real restitution is to understand your rights as it pertains to debt. So a part of your debt management or financial management strategy has to be to understand debt and credit laws. If just 50% of the people who are in trouble did that, it would change the entire country.
And if 50% of those people just learn 50% of those laws,
Exactly.
I mean, we would be in a lot better shape. I mean, collectively speaking, we would all be in a much better shape. So, I mean, I want to introduce Dr. Grayson to our listeners again. Dr. Grayson is a renowned credit doctor and is the author of the book Extreme Credit, Volume 1, Perfect Credit in 90 Days or Less. And he's the proprietor of Grayson Financial Services, which has the ability to help individuals and businesses get financing, increase their credit, decrease their debt, and control their finances. So, Dr. Grayson, I just looked online and I saw a question from one of our listeners, and she wants to know, say you have a collection account.
Yes.
That's expired. So I guess by expire, I guess they mean after 7 years, it's not reporting on the report anymore. But does she still need to pay it in terms of making sure that it positively impacts her credit score? So I guess after 7 years, is the debt still there? Does she still need to pay it, and does it affect the credit score?
I think she means either it's past the date for removal from the credit, or she might mean it has passed the statute of limitations. Every state has a statute of limitations for how long you can even collect the debt. Most people don't realize that. In most states, it averages between 3 to 5 years. So say, for instance, you have a credit card that you're using, you stop paying, it reaches 120 days past due, the creditor agrees to take the IRS charge-off credit, so they walk away from the debt. They pass it off to a collector. If from the date of charge-off or last activity with the original creditor, once that exceeds 3 to 5 years, no one can collect on the debt for any reason. The only reason they do is because people don't understand debt forgiveness laws. No one can collect that debt. So please, if it's past 7 years, please don't pay that. What you have to do is send them some correspondence, explain to them the reasons why they should walk away from that debt. That debt's called zombie debt. You know, a zombie debt is a multi-billion-dollar industry in collections, and if you Google FTC versus zombie debt or collection agencies, you'll see that they're actively trying to shut down these companies who are very active in purchasing zombie debt. But zombie debt is a license to print money, if you think about it. I mean, all these guys do, they spend a couple $100,000 buying billions of dollars worth of worthless paper.
Okay.
You know? And then they send you a collection letter, and you're thinking, well, maybe I need to pay. If I pay them, it'll improve my credit. So you send them that money. They say, yeah, it's going to improve your credit. We're going to send a letter to the creditors and tell them to update that to paid.
Okay. I understand. I mean, that's I think that's what she was getting at, and that's another, nuance that people need to understand. I think we have a caller on the line, Dr. Grayson. I want to bring this person on, but if anyone out there wants to ask Dr. Grayson a question, the number is 212-650-6903. And hello, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we have Dr. Grayson on the phone. What's your question about credit?
Well, basically, I just like to know how to get in touch with Dr. Grayson. I'm fascinated about his concept, and it's definitely something that we in the community are not aware of. And I just like to get some more information to really be able to establish some excellent credit. And I'll hang up and listen, and please give his number.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your call.
Thank you, brother.
Okay.
I appreciate that caller. One of my areas now, we consult with all levels of clients from all kinds of demographics, but I'm going to try to focus, especially, in the coming months, in underserved communities. A lot of demographics have access to state-of-the-art credit technology. And you look at people like Donald Trump. Donald Trump went bankrupt for $1 billion. He bounced right back, and he's a billionaire again. Certain people have access to this information. They don't look at debt like you do. We will have, it starts with us. We're targeted young, and we might have one bad credit card, and that takes us out of the credit game for the entirety of our life. And that is by design. So in the minority communities, I'm really looking to do workshops. If any of you guys are listening, if you're tied to an organization, a nonprofit organization, a community group, a church, or, some type of government agency, and you'd like me to come in and really, once we teach this fundamental concept, then we can pass it on generationally. Mm-hmm. And that's really where we're trying to go with this.
And that's so important. I mean, just from your time, and I always say this when you come on the show with us, is that even for myself, as someone who thinks of himself as having some life experiences and being a professional, being an attorney, I couldn't figure out why my credit score was where it was at.
Right.
And you said, take a look at your report, and it wasn't that I was fearful of looking at the report, but I just felt like I know it's on there already, and I still can't understand why it's at this number. And but one day I was in front of my computer and I went to freecreditreport.com or one of the other ones that you suggested,
okay.
And I looked at it and I saw that there were 2 judgments on my credit report that weren't even mine.
Can you imagine?
And similar names but not quite the same, and a different address, and I'm like, my God, I mean, if I had only looked at this before, but that's what I would encourage everyone to do, is to learn from my lesson. And I know some people are fearful about pulling their credit report and taking a look at it, but Dr. Grayson will give you some suggestions on some websites where you can look at your report for free and go through it and see if there are any errors on it, because some people feel like, I don't have the money to pay back these people, I don't have the funds, and maybe a lot of them, I'm sure a lot of the people in the community and people who are listening are unemployed, so they don't have the funds to pay it back. But I know we've discussed before that there are steps that you can take without having money in your pocket right now,
yes.
in your bank account,
yes.
to begin to rehabilitate your credit.
I mean, really, listen, this is very important. Now, traditionally, I've had a lot of high-profile clients, but now we're really trying to get more actively involved in the community, but this translates at a lot of levels. One of our clients last year is a very big movie producer in the New York area. Now, he has been out of work for like 2 years or so, but he had an upcoming project, and fortunately he was referred to me, and he had a big movie project coming up, and he's like, well, once I sign for this movie project, I'll get a lot of money, and I'm going to pay off all this debt. So fortunately, I got to him a couple months before that happened, and I looked at him, I said, you want to resolve your debts now. So now I don't have to lie and say, I have a hardship when I got a couple hundred G's in the bank. Mm-hmm. If you have a hardship, if you legitimately can't pay your bills, there are programs to wipe your debt out. You want to resolve it right now. I had a conversation with a client recently who came in and brought me a gift because they had a huge tax liability. And so the IRS has a couple Fresh Start programs to help you eliminate your debt. But someone had suggested to them, one of their financial advisors told them that because they were temporarily out of work, that they could file for it's called uncollectible status. Mm-hmm. So the IRS they're passing that out like water. So they'll put you on uncollectible status where they will not come after you at all. The problem with that psychology is they know that eventually you will have money. Now they're going to want it all. So what I told this client was, I'm going to take you off uncollectible status. Let's do an offer and compromise and negotiate a fair settlement with the government based on your current income levels, which is nothing. And the government reduced its tax liability 90%.
Right. Right.
So, and they gave him 2 years to pay. So his monthly payments were ridiculous and nothing. And then when he, a couple months later, after he got his big contract, now he was able to resolve his entire credit situation. And not only that, now he can bring his family back up to the lifestyle which they're accustomed to. Now that is an investment in good credit, and it helps the economy. If he goes out and buys a new car, that serves everybody. Do you know how many people are tied to the car industry? Whenever somebody buys a new car, you should be shaking their hands because they're helping your economy. They're helping you personally.
Absolutely. Dr. Grayson, we have another caller on the line with us. Hello, and where are you calling from?
Yes, I'm calling from Harlem.
Okay, and what's your question for Dr. Grayson?
My question is, I settled some debt, and I applied for credit about a year later, and then I realized once they sent me a notice saying that I still had all of these settlements or charge-offs on my credit report, and I settled with them for a fraction.
Yes.
And I was paying the difference. I owe them maybe like $500 left. But what I want to know is how can I get that off my credit report, because I understand when you go look for jobs, you're going to have bad credit and you may not get employment.
That's absolutely correct. And I'm glad you brought that up, because traditionally that is exactly what's happening. In your case where you've already settled or already paid, unfortunately, you've taken the easy part of this process out. So now it gets much more difficult. It's much easier when you still owe them money. It's called a contingency letter. Whenever you're trying to settle or negotiate with someone, you should first negotiate. Come to an agreement. Like you did an excellent job. You settled for pennies on the dollar. That's good. But what you do after that, you say, hey, before I send you any money, what I want to do is write down exactly what we have agreed. I'm going to send you a copy of that, and I just need you to sign off on that. Now you're bringing in the contingency letter, a backdoor approach. You're using their same type of methodologies to reverse the negative that they've done to you. So you say, look, I'm just going to write it up, but as part of your contingency letter, one of the caveats or provisions has to be that they agree to remove the item from your credit, not show it paid or settle for less than full balance. You have to do that. So now you've already crossed that bridge. You passed that point. So now what we have to do is look at each creditor now on an individual basis to determine the proper administrative remedy. Now, whenever you're going after these guys to clean these things off your credit, after you settle, after you've paid, it takes what's called an administrative remedy. And let me give you an example of administrative remedy. If you had a charge-off with an original creditor, you would present them, you would ask them to show you what you owe them, to proof up what you owe. Because legally, if you put negative information on my credit report, that is a collection activity. So if you're engaging in a collection activity, then I must, or you're purporting that I owe some monies to you. So we approach them from the standpoint that, please show me what I still owe you to justify this collection activity. Now, unfortunately, that is a very aggressive and litigious document, so it's not something I could easily explain to you, write this or how you do that, because it has to be customized to the creditor, to the situation. But, if you come to one of my workshops or if you give us a call in the office, we can go through more of this kind of strategy with you. But the proper response is you need an administrative remedy.
Okay, and I have one more question. You spoke about someone, creditors not being able to collect debt, how they sell it off to a third party. Yes. What is the time frame in New York, for example, even if the debt is $2,000 or $150?
In New York, I believe it's 5 years.
Okay, so 5 years from the last time you made a payment, or
from date of charge-off.
Date of charge-off.
When they charge it off, that's the date of last activity.
So, Dr. Grayson, just so I'm clear too, because this has always been something I've wondered about. So when they keep reselling it, do they renew the debt at that point? So
theoretically, they will try to convince you that they're restoring date of last activity. But that's an argument. For instance, like we will, if we do a dispute with the credit bureau, they might say, well, the date of last activity was the date when they instituted new activity. But legally, it's from date of when the item was charged off. Okay. So we just have to approach them with a very aggressive argument, and that's why we're successful at taking those kinds of items off. But that's how, like a lot of people have items that stay on their credit forever, and they're thinking, well, after 7 years, this stuff is going to drop off, but it never drops off because the credit bureaus will tell you, oh, it's date of last activity. If you call them or send them a dispute, they might just tell you it's date of last activity, and they're not telling you the exact statute. Because if you knew that, you would say, wait a minute, it's not date of last activity from the collection agency, it's from my creditor. A collection agency is not a creditor. It's from the creditor, not a collection agency. But they will pretend that they don't know that these people are not creditors. And if you don't exercise your rights or give them any conflicting information, they will just assume it and penalize you for that.
Okay. All right. Well, caller, thank you for your call. But I would encourage you to continue to listen to the show so you can take down Dr. Grayson's contact information if you have any further questions, and you can talk to him directly about your personal experience.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Grayson, in a few remaining moments, can you give our listeners just your general recommendation on, things that they should do to, begin the process this new year if they're interested in putting together a strategy for increasing their credit scores or rehabilitating their credit? And then can you give out your contact information as well?
Okay. Well, the first thing that we always do with all of our clients, especially at the new year, is have you make a list of good debt versus bad debt. So your good debt is any debt that you're less than 90 days past due, any debt that's securitized like a mortgage or car loan, and any government-based debt like a tax lien or a student loan. All good debts, I'm going to focus on paying them off the right way. So once I total all my good debts, if I can afford to pay them, I'm going to pay them. If I can't afford to pay them, I'm going to put them into a hardship program. If after I put all of them into a hardship program, I'm still coming up short every month, then I'm going to offer a settlement with a payment plan to the creditors. The only reason I don't do that initially is once I do that, it shuts down the relationship, so they'll close my account. So I know that I still need to keep active. So I make that the number 3 step. If the settlements are still outside my ability to pay, then at that point, I would say you don't have an opportunity to resolve it. You can try to get loans or things like that from your relatives. But good debts, I want to always keep those good. I want to keep my relationship with my creditors.
Okay. Dr. Grayson, can you give us your contact information?
Yes. My phone number is 718-322-7220. And, of course, you can go to our website. It's 990club.com. It gives you all of our contact information. We have an office in Georgia. It gives you all of our locations. And it gives you for those of you who want more information, the website's a great place to go to get more information about debt forgiveness laws and things of that nature, so you can really start to restructure yourself to take advantage of the new year.
Dr. Grayson, thank you for joining us on the show today and giving us the encouragement we need to try to tackle some of our own personal matters in terms of finance and debt management and certainly with credit, because credit is a tricky thing for many of us, and some of us are fearful about jumping into that area to try to correct it. But you have an experienced person here with Dr. Grayson. I encourage you to call him. Again, his number is 718-322-7220, and his website is 990club.com. So again, Dr. Grayson, thank you for your time. Happy New
Tony,
Year.
I appreciate you. You're doing a tremendous job in the community. We really need you. So I encourage you to keep it up, and anytime you need me, I'm always available.
Well, I do want to make that announcement. We're going to have Dr. Grayson as a regular guest on our show every second Wednesday of the month.
Yes, sir.
So I believe the next time is on February 13th. So please be aware, everyone listening, join us again. If you have any credit issues that you'd like to discuss, you can email me at legalease@whcr.org. And, I can get your questions to Dr. Grayson. But, again, you can reach him directly at 718-322-7220. So, again, Dr. Grayson, thank you, and I look forward to speaking to you again next month.
All right. Talk to you soon. You guys have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Whcr 90.3 FM, New York.
Where do you want to go to lunch?
I'm having a stroke.
Did you hear what I said?
I'm having a stroke.
Why aren't you answering me?
I'm having a stroke.
What's up with your face?
I'm having a stroke.
That's not normal. Is something wrong?
I'm having a stroke.
Are you having an allergic reaction?
I'm having a stroke.
When someone is having a stroke, they may not be able to say it with words, but their body language will tell you loud and clear.
I'm having a stroke.
You just need to know the sudden signs. Look for FAST, F-A-S-T. F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. Or S, speech difficulty. Then T, time. Time to call 911 immediately, because the sooner they get to the hospital, the sooner they'll get treatment. And that can make a remarkable difference in their recovery. Know the sudden signs. Face, arm, speech, time. Spot a stroke fast. Visit strokeassociation.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association and the Ad Council.
You don't have to travel downtown for Italian cuisine in an elegant atmosphere. Gran Piazza d'Oro now has a full-service bar, and they offer the best in Italian cuisine. Satisfy your palate with an assortment of traditional Italian dishes like fettuccine alfredo, chicken marsala, and their award-winning special, golden lobster alla Gilberto. Gran Piazza d'Oro is available to host and or cater your next event. Gran Piazza d'Oro is located at 1429 Fifth Avenue between 116th and 117th Streets in Harlem. For more information, call 212-722-2244 or visit grandpiattorestaurant.com.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.